Have you ever been forced to sit in silence at your own dining table, only to watch your partner be publicly shopped to another woman by his family? Welcome back to my tear-filled diary. For those who are casually scrolling past this video for the first time, I am Emily. Driven by a burning and blind love, I left my free, modern life in America to fly halfway across the world and become a daughter-in-law in a fiercely strict, traditional family in Vietnam. My dream of a rosy, multicultural marriage was quickly crushed, replaced by a prolonged nightmare of living with a mother-in-law who harbors a deep prejudice against my Western roots. After the tragedy of being stripped of my rights as a daughter-in-law and publicly shamed at the death anniversary in the previous episode, I thought I had reached the absolute bottom of humiliation. However, I was wrong. On a gloomy weekend morning, while I was quietly cleaning the house, Madame Lan suddenly stepped into the living room and made a blunt announcement. Tonight, the house would welcome an extremely important guest for dinner. That guest was named Lan An, the precious daughter of her absolute best friend from her youth. Completely opposite to a troublesome, clumsy, foreign daughter-in-law who does not understand the culture like me, Lan An was described as the living embodiment of a standard, traditional Vietnamese girl. From that very second, my womanly intuition told me the appearance of this girl was absolutely not a coincidental visit, but a ruthless psychological move, a perfectly orchestrated act by my mother-in-law. The moment the gate opened in the twilight, Lan An appeared as radiant as a princess, stepping out of a fairy tale. She carried a bright, gentle smile and was loaded with expensive gift bags, boxes of bird's nest and ginseng, perfectly wrapped to win over the elders of the house. Without a single trace of hesitation or the politeness of a guest, Lan An immediately rolled up the sleeves of her soft chiffon shirt and walked straight into the kitchen, a place that should have been my territory. She quickly put on an apron and began to help Madame Lan cook in an incredibly skillful, expert manner. The rhythmic sound of chopping on the wooden board blended with their roaring laughter and endless, joyful gossip between the two women. What was even more painful and bitter was that when Min arrived home, she immediately ran out to greet him, continuously talking to him in fluent Vietnamese. They happily reminisced about beautiful childhood memories, neighborhood stories that I, a foreign wife, could forever never squeeze my way into. I could only stand shrinking back, leaning against the cold wall in the hallway, dead silent as I watched that script of a happy family unfold before my eyes. In that exact moment, I was officially pushed to the edge, completely becoming an unwanted outcast, the most ungraceful and pathetic uninvited guest in my very own home. When everyone gathered around and the dinner officially began, Madame Lan's real stage finally raised its curtains. During that suffocating meal, Madame Lan completely ignored me. She continuously used her chopsticks to pick up the most delicious pieces of food, the softest cuts of meat, piling them high into Lan An's bowl, accompanied by affectionate looks and sweet, flattering praises that were enough to give anyone goosebumps. She purposely raised her voice, speaking loudly across the table solely so that Min and I could hear. Lan An is so capable. Her cooking is both skillful and refined. She knows exactly how to build and care for a family flawlessly. Any man who has the fortune to marry a gentle, resourceful wife like you truly has 3 lifetimes of blessings. Not like bringing home a useless, clumsy burden who only brings suffering to the ancestors and smears ash and mud on the family lineage. Every single sharp, venom-filled word she uttered felt like sharp needles, directly piercing through and shredding my already fragile, battered self-esteem. She did not bother to hide her disgust anymore. She was publicly trampling on me to elevate the missed daughter-in-law she had always desired. My heart tightened in waves, my chest aching so much that I could not breathe. My eyes welled up with tears, turning to stare desperately at Min. Deep down, I was screaming, praying that he would bravely stand up, slam the table, and defend the honor of his humiliated foreign wife. But, once again, the reality slapped me with a blinding blow. Min chose the safest and most cowardly way to escape the conflict. Min looked extremely awkward, his face turning bright red from embarrassment. He completely avoided my pleading eyes. He only managed a forced, awkward smile, politely nodding in response to Lanan's stories, and then weakly, hesitantly tried to shift the topic to meaningless talk about work and the weather. He completely lacked the courage. He did not dare to open his mouth to cut off the blatant and malicious insults of his own mother. The vain pride of an Asian man, the cowardice rooted in him since childhood, made him close his eyes and ignore it, completely forgetting the tears and shattered emotions of his wife sitting curled up right next to him, trembling from utter humiliation. Even though my Vietnamese vocabulary at that time was still very limited, not enough to translate and fully understand 100% of every toxic, sarcastic word they threw at my face, but just by looking at the victorious, openly gloating attitude of my mother-in-law and the flirting, triumphant eyes of that guest, I had more than enough to clearly understand my position at that moment. I was being used as a pathetic launching pad to honor and highlight the perfection of that girl. But the climax of the humiliation, the final punch that knocked out the last ounce of endurance I had left, was when Lanan suddenly turned to look at me. She blinked her large, round eyes, pretending to be innocently faultless, and dropped a clumsy, slow English sentence that was packed with maximum lethality and sarcasm. "Oh, you do not know how to cook this? It is so easy for Vietnamese girls." That deliberate taunt, emphasizing the difference, was exactly like a stinging, deafening slap delivered straight to my face. It ruthlessly incinerated the last bit of endurance, the last drop of patience I had tried to patch together since stepping foot into this haunted house. And then, the final drop finally made the glass overflow. In a deadly silent room, when all eyes were fixed on me, waiting for a reaction, Madame Lan suddenly turned her face directly toward Min. She let out a long, heavy sigh, dropping the most ruthless, cold-blooded finishing blow that a mother could say in front of her daughter-in-law. "See, if only you had been smart enough to listen to your mother back then, and stayed home to marry Lan An, I would have grandchildren to hold and bring joy to this house by now. Instead of breaking my back to endure this cold, empty house, facing a dead-end bloodline like this," those words crossed every boundary of morality and respect. Unable to continue biting my teeth and enduring it, unable to let my dignity be trampled on for a single second longer, I slowly and decisively slammed my chopsticks down onto the glass table, creating a dry, loud crack. I turned my face to look straight into Min's eyes with the coldest, sharpest, and most hateful glare I had ever shown. In a firm, clear English voice, emphasizing every word without a single tremble, I gritted my teeth and asked him directly in front of everyone, "Are you going to let her say those words to me, right here in our own home? Answer me. If the man you call your husband allows others to humiliate you right at the dining table, will you continue to stand up and fight back in despair? Or will you quietly pack your luggage and end it all?"